family that seemed perfect, a nanny who was trusted without question. And in just one peaceful afternoon, everything collapsed in a way no one could have imagined. What really happened behind the door of that apartment?
Investigators are trying to figure out this morning what could have made a New York family's caretaker turn on the children she was paid to protect.
Move it up! Keep going!
Kevin Krim, 37 years old, and his wife, Marina Krim, 36 years old, had 3 children: Inez, often called Nessie; Lucia, 6 years old with the nickname Lulu; and their youngest son, Leo, just 2 years old. The family had originally been living in California before deciding to leave San Francisco to begin a new chapter in New York. Kevin Krim was a digital content executive at CNBC, while Marina was a former preschool teacher who held a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree and a master's degree in education. After becoming a mother, Marina chose to temporarily step away from her career to focus entirely on caring for her children, placing family above everything else. To have additional support in their daily life, they hired a nanny named Jocelyn Ortega, 50 years old, who had worked with the Krim family for approximately 2 years and was considered a familiar presence in the rhythm of their everyday life. On October 25, 2012, at the La Rochelle apartment building in the Upper West Side, a 10-story building on West 75th Street just 1 block from Central Park, everything was unfolding as normally as it did on any other day. A woman named Charlotte later recalled that she happened to be standing in the elevator with 2 children from the building and their nanny. And in that very ordinary moment, she smiled and said to a little girl, "Do you know how beautiful you are?" Only to be met with a bright smile and a polite thank you. There were no signs of anything unusual, neither in the nanny nor in the 2 children. Everything felt calm, so peaceful that no one could have imagined what was about to happen. Yet less than 1 hour later, at around 5:30 p.m., when Charlotte returned to the elevator, she suddenly heard a sound that she would later describe as a primal scream echoing from somewhere in the building, a sensation so raw it sent a chill down her spine with pure panic. Stepping outside, she saw a woman standing on the mezzanine level in a highly agitated state. And within moments, other neighbors heard it as well. Rushing out and trying to grasp what terrible thing had just occurred in a space that had moments before felt entirely serene. As the sounds of chaos began to spread throughout the building, Marina Krim was, at that moment, taking her youngest daughter, Nessie, just 3 years old, to a swimming lesson as planned. The other 2 children, Lucia, 6 years old, and little Leo, 2 years old, had stayed home with the nanny, Jocelyn Ortega, who had been with the family for the past 2 years. Marina had planned to meet Jocelyn again later that afternoon, but as time passed, she saw no sign of either the nanny or her children, and the series of messages she sent received no response. "Where are you? Where is Lulu?" Marina texted as her anxiety steadily rose, before deciding to carry Nessie back to the apartment to check for herself. When the door opened, the first thing that made her stop short was the unnatural silence. The apartment dark, as if no one had been there for hours. Marina went downstairs to ask the building's doorman, and was told that the nanny and the 2 children had not left. She returned to the apartment, stepping inside with a tightening sense of dread, noticing that her daughter's bag and her son's stroller were still exactly where they had been. Holding Nessie's hand tightly, Marina moved through each room until she stopped in front of the bathroom door, where a faint strip of light spilled out from the narrow gap of the closed door. What she saw behind that door was a moment no mother could endure. Lucia and Leo had become victims of an irreversible tragedy in that same space. Marina locked eyes with Jocelyn, and moments later, the nanny engaged in a severely self-harming act using a sharp object, turning an apartment once filled with children's laughter into the epicenter of unspeakable pain. Rema Starr, who lived on the same floor as the Crim family, said she heard the chaos erupting from the hallway, accompanied by panicked screams, including a haunting statement that she has harmed the children. And according to Rema, it was a horrifying experience beyond anything she could have imagined. The building's doorman, Glenn Ludi, immediately called 911 while anguished cries could still be heard in the background of the call. Law enforcement officers arrived at the building quickly, and upon entering the lobby, they encountered Marina Crim in a state of complete collapse, crying uncontrollably while clutching Nessie tightly in her arms. One neighbor later described her as nearly impossible to console, caught in an extreme mental crisis. What awaited emergency responders inside the apartment went far beyond any nightmare scenario, as the scene revealed signs of a severe and violent incident, with dangerous items found in multiple locations throughout the residence. As additional emergency personnel continued to be dispatched, Kevin Crim, Marina's husband, was on his way back from a business trip, traveling from John F. Kennedy International Airport to Manhattan in his role as Senior Vice President of CNBC Digital. When he arrived, 2 plainclothes police officers approached him and played a voicemail left by Marina, containing only fragmented sounds of panic, before directly informing him of the tragedy that had just occurred. Jocelyn Ortega was later restrained and removed from the building on a stretcher in critical condition, then transported to New York Presbyterian Hospital for treatment of self-inflicted injuries, bringing an afternoon that would forever alter the fate of the Crim family to a devastating close. As the information began to spread, the atmosphere surrounding the building quickly fell into a state of shock and disbelief. Marina and Nessie were escorted away from the scene by law enforcement, both of them covered with white sheets to shield them from the lenses of photographers already waiting outside. Marina was later taken to the hospital for treatment of severe psychological trauma following the overwhelming shock. The 2 children, Leo and Lucia, were rushed to St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital Center, where doctors were forced to confirm that both had suffered an irreversible loss of life. The incident was immediately classified as an especially serious criminal case.
They came to the Upper West Side today and stared, silently, hopelessly trying to make some sense of all the horror and pain here. But how in the world do you make sense out of this?
Jocelyn, whom the children affectionately called Josie, had throughout her time of employment been treated as a familiar part of the Crim family's daily life. She was born in Santiago de los Caballeros, later moved to the United States and became a naturalized citizen, and was living in Manhattan with her sister and her son. It was Jocelyn's sister who served as the connection that introduced her to the Crim family, as she was also working as a nanny, and the child she cared for attended the same preschool as Lucia. The 2 women first met Marina in a ballet class, where Jocelyn's sister proactively asked whether Marina was looking for childcare. And at that time, Marina explained that the family was still considering their options, as they had not been in New York for very long. The Crim family later conducted reference checks on Jocelyn, and all initial feedback indicated there was nothing of concern. However, it later emerged that a relative of Jocelyn had provided inaccurate reference information. Marina maintained a personal blog that documented the Crim family's everyday life in great detail, titled Life with the Crim Kids, where she shared small moments centered around raising her children, and through which it was clear that Jocelyn had become a familiar presence within that world. In February 2012, just a few months before the tragedy occurred, the Crim family took a 9-day trip to the Dominican Republic, spending half of their time at Jocelyn's sister's home in Santiago de los Caballeros, and the other half at Balcones Atlántico in Las Terrenas. In a post dated February 18th, Marina wrote, "We spent the past 9 days in the Dominican Republic, half the time at Josie's sister's home in Santiago, and the remaining time at Balcones Atlántico in Las Terrenas, a condo-style hotel where the real housewives of the Dominican Republic and their families often spend their weekends. It was wonderful. We met Josie's amazing family, and the Dominican Republic is a beautiful country." Those words clearly reflected the trust and closeness Marina felt toward her nanny. On September 30th, Marina shared a photo of her youngest son after his 2nd birthday, accompanied by a reflection, "One of the best parts of my day is after dropping both girls off at school and having 3 precious hours with Leo all to myself." Okay, I'm being a little mushy, but I love this little guy so much. A simple expression that, in hindsight, makes the depth of what that family lost feel even more profound.
Investigators are trying to figure out this morning what could have made a New York family's caretaker turn on the children she was paid to protect.
Move it up! Keep going!
On the floor of the bathroom is a nanny who apparently had inflicted wounds on her throat.
Herbert Klein lives next door and heard the mother screaming.
She's crying out, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? My life is ruined. I have no children. I have no children.
Police escorted Crim from the scene after dark with her only surviving child, a sheet draped over their heads. The 50-year-old nanny survived the wounds to her throat, and this morning police say she's in critical but stable condition at a nearby hospital.
The injuries Jocelyn inflicted on herself, fortunately, did not affect any critical areas. But she initially fell into a coma and required respiratory support under close law enforcement supervision. 2 days later, Jocelyn regained consciousness but was unable to speak, restrained to her hospital bed and able to communicate only by mouthing words or pointing to an alphabet board. And in one such instance, she wrote, "I had to do everything and take care of the children. I was just doing the nanny job, but she wanted me to do everything. She wanted me to clean 5 hours a week." From that point, investigators began to take a deeper look into Jocelyn's life to understand the underlying pressures behind her actions, including the fact that a few months earlier she had brought her 17-year-old son from the Dominican Republic to New York with the hope of enrolling him in a private school. Jocelyn's brother agreed to cover the cost for the first year, but required her to manage the expenses thereafter on her own, adding further financial strain to an already heavy burden. Her former partner, from whom she had separated in 2001, stated that there had been no serious conflicts between them and admitted that he was completely shocked by what had happened, while a source told the media that he could not explain the deep psychological turmoil that appeared to have been unfolding within Jocelyn at that time. Jocelyn's niece described the entire incident as a massive shock and said, "She loved those children. I don't know what made her do this," adding that recently her aunt had been behaving unusually, frequently anxious and tense. A neighbor who had seen Jocelyn just days earlier also described her as very quiet, barely speaking to anyone, and often staring straight ahead. Many people living near her in Hamilton Heights noticed this clear change, saying Jocelyn had lost weight, seemed less cheerful, was easily unsettled, and showed signs of agitation. Not long before, she had moved to Hamilton Heights after losing her apartment in the Bronx and had been selling small personal items to help cover living expenses. Jocelyn told investigators that she was experiencing financial difficulties, and this strain intensified after the family suggested she take on additional household chores in exchange for higher pay. A proposal she reacted to angrily, reportedly saying, "I'm paid to take care of the children, not to clean and do housework." Notably, just one day before the tragedy occurred. Fausto Cornell, who had known Jocelyn since childhood, said she had asked his wife to take her to see a mental health professional. As the sedatives gradually wore off, Jocelyn was described as nearly motionless, able only to move her eyes and nod very slightly. And according to a law enforcement source, the more she realized what had happened, the less she wanted to talk. Not long afterward, Jocelyn was formally charged while she was still confined to her hospital bed. As the story spread, global public opinion fell into a state of shock, not only because of the severity of the incident, but also because the person responsible for the tragedy had once been someone the victim's family trusted completely. Mark Hoffman, the chairman and chief executive officer of CNBC, where Kevin worked, issued a statement saying, "Shock is inevitable. The pain we feel on behalf of Kevin, Marina, and their family is immeasurable. There truly are no words that can adequately describe the magnitude of this tragedy. The sorrow that all of us feel for Kevin, Marina, and their family cannot be measured." In the days that followed, relatives from both sides of the family flew urgently from the West Coast to New York to be with them. Kevin's father shared that the family would not return to the apartment and did not know if they would ever have the strength to go back there. Kevin struggled to remain standing for the sake of his wife and his surviving daughter, while the children's grandfather said through his pain, "I can't talk to my parents right now because I would completely break down. We are just grieving. This is the worst nightmare anyone could ever imagine." Their grandmother, Karen Krim, also tearfully admitted, "We cannot understand what caused everything to erupt to this extent." Facing 2 counts related to causing a tragedy at the highest level and 2 additional serious charges, Jocelyn entered a plea denying responsibility, citing arguments related to her psychological condition. However, prosecutors asserted that she was fully aware of her actions, arguing that they were intentional and driven by resentment directed toward Marina, while emphasizing that there was no credible evidence indicating that she suffered from a severe psychological disorder or any impairment of cognitive capacity. Meanwhile, defense attorneys requested additional time to review more than 6,000 pages of medical records to assess whether Jocelyn was competent to participate in the legal proceedings. While awaiting that determination, she was held without bail in a special treatment unit for inmates with psychological issues at Elmhurst Hospital Center. A solemn memorial service was held at Avery Fisher Hall, where family members, friends, and the wider community gathered to remember Lulu and Leo. Afterward, Kevin and Marina shared a deeply emotional message of gratitude for the love and kindness they had received. "Lulu and Leo are 2 of our 3 best friends, and we miss them so much. Our daughter Nessie is very strong, and with your support, we will be strong for her." They expressed that what mattered most was that Lulu and Leo would always be remembered as sweet, creative children, full of love and joy for life, in an effort to transform their pain into something meaningful. The family established the Lulu and Leo Fund to support arts education and interactive science for young children in schools, museums, and community organizations, with the hope of sharing the moments of happiness Lulu experienced in her art classes with many other children. In October 2013, amid a period marked by profound loss, the Crim family welcomed a new ray of light with the arrival of a baby boy named Felix. On Facebook, they shared that autumn was always an emotionally charged season, coinciding with Leo's birthday and serving as a reminder of the loss of both Lulu and Leo. Yet it also carried new hope, as Marina was expecting a baby boy due at the end of January. They wrote that Nessie was incredibly excited about her role as the big sister in the family, while Felix was gradually adjusting to his new life alongside his sister. Kevin and Marina also reflected that each child who came into their lives carried a unique connection to Lulu and Leo, as if the two of them were still present in subtle ways, in familiar looks, gestures, and sounds. Later on, Marina went on to welcome another baby boy, naming him Linus, bringing to a close a long journey of rediscovering life and hope after an unforgettable tragedy. After a period of treatment and evaluation, Jocelyn Ortega was ultimately declared competent to stand trial, following a court-ordered psychological assessment that confirmed she understood the legal proceedings and was capable of participating in her own defense. Before the trial officially began, Jocelyn appeared before Judge Gregory Caro, and during the jury selection phase, he stated bluntly, "If you don't feel emotional hearing this case, then you should probably check your pulse." Jocelyn rejected a plea deal that would have required her to accept a lengthy prison sentence in exchange for avoiding trial, choosing instead to pursue a defense strategy of not responsible by reason of mental incapacity, a decision widely regarded as extremely risky. Under legal standards, the defense was required to prove that the defendant did not understand that her actions were wrong and was unable to comprehend their consequences. But from the outset, prosecutors firmly rejected this argument, maintaining that what occurred was not the result of a loss of control, but rather the product of awareness and deliberate choice. According to the prosecution's argument, Jocelyn had prepared dangerous items from the kitchen area before causing the tragedy and chose a moment she believed no one would intervene. The manner in which she acted demonstrated an intent to prevent the children from calling for help, and in a desperate attempt to protect herself, Lucia resisted fiercely, resulting in severe injuries that left even the initial emergency responders stunned by the brutality of what had occurred. Prosecutors emphasized that this was not an impulsive act, but a sequence of behaviors that had been calculated and prepared in advance. Notably, shortly before the tragedy took place, Jocelyn Ortega had proactively arranged an appointment with a mental health professional, a rare instance in which she sought professional help over the course of many decades. During that consultation, she expressed feelings of anxiety, tension, and the crushing pressure of perceived failure. But according to statements cited by the district attorney from therapist Thomas Caffrey, who met with Jocelyn directly, she spoke about guilt, anxiety, and depression, but there was no indication that she wanted to do anything dangerous. "I did not see signs of hallucinations, delusions, or a psychotic state." This testimony became one of the key points supporting the prosecution's continued rejection of the argument that Jocelyn lacked cognitive capacity at the time the tragedy occurred. For the jurors, having to sit in the courtroom and listen to every detail of what had happened to Lucia and Leo was an emotional ordeal almost beyond description. When images from the scene were presented, the atmosphere in the room seemed to freeze under the weight of what was shown, so heavy and unsettling that some people were unable to control their physical reactions to the descriptions. Another juror even asked to be excused, admitting that after seeing those images, he no longer felt capable of maintaining the objectivity required for the trial. In stark contrast to those reactions, the defendant Jocelyn Ortega barely looked toward the screen, remaining motionless and staring straight ahead with an unsettling, detached expression. At one point, she let out a very slight laugh as a former police officer recounted his interactions with her after the incident, and at other moments, she shook her head or rolled her eyes, gestures that caused many people in the courtroom to feel deeply disturbed and uneasy. Jocelyn Ortega's defense attorneys argued that their client had suffered from long-standing psychological disturbances dating back to childhood, including distorted states of perception. But instead of seeking medical treatment, she had chosen to rely on faith and prayer to cope with those instabilities. After the incident, Jocelyn told a psychologist that she felt controlled by an unseen force and heard voices urging her to do the wrong thing. And in court, her attorneys emphasized psychological suffering does not present itself as clearly as a cough or a broken leg. It can exist quietly, hidden deep inside, and only reveal itself when it is already too late. However, prosecutors firmly rejected this argument, stating that Jocelyn's actions on the day of the tragedy demonstrated full awareness of what she was doing. From leaving her phone behind as if to avoid being tracked to hanging certain important documents on the apartment door handle, all of which pointed to deliberate preparation. This was not an impulsive act. This was a calculated plan, the prosecutor asserted, adding that the objective that day was to cause a tragedy involving the Crim family's 2 children and then end everything. When Jocelyn's son took the stand and referred to the incident as an accident, the prosecutor immediately interrupted. "I'm sorry. Did you just say an accident?" And the son could only respond through tears, unfortunately. The 2 children suffered an irreversible loss of life. While some people believed that Jocelyn Ortega showed signs of being influenced by unusual factors before the tragedy occurred, her son offered a completely different perspective. He said that on that morning, he noticed nothing particularly alarming about his mother, aside from the fact that she seemed a bit sadder and more tired than usual. Yet she still kissed him goodbye and waved as he left for school like she did every day, making everything appear normal in his eyes. However, that evening, at the very moment the serious incident unfolded, he unexpectedly received a phone call from his mother's number. When he answered, he heard only a man's voice briefly say, "I need help," before the call abruptly disconnected. The phone that Jocelyn left behind at the apartment was never recovered afterward, and that line of communication was permanently cut off. Although no single, clear motive could be identified, prosecutors argued that Jocelyn Ortega's actions may have stemmed from a convergence of growing jealousy and mounting financial pressure, as she was unable to afford private school tuition for her son, had lost her previous housing, and was forced to move in with her sister. However, the prosecutor also acknowledged that this remained only a hypothesis, not a complete explanation for everything that had occurred. And perhaps, as many have come to feel, this case offers no fully satisfying answer at all, because sometimes, in the greatest tragedies, there simply is no rational explanation. Yet the inability to fully understand the cause does not erase responsibility, because the truth remains unchanged. Jocelyn was the one who caused the tragedy that took Lucia and Leo, and no argument can lessen the severity of that act. During the trial, Kevin Krim also took the stand, and his testimony brought the courtroom to silence, with many jurors unable to hold back their tears. Kevin recounted the final moments with his children at the hospital, a memory that would stay with him forever. Lulu and Leo were lying still in their beds, the sheets pulled up to their chins. They looked so peaceful and unfamiliar. Even though everything had changed so much, that innocence was still there, their long eyelashes gently closed like angels. He said he knelt down, kissed his children one last time, and whispered goodbye. In a moment no father should ever have to endure.
With a look of disgust on his face, Kevin Krim sat on a courtroom bench just a few yards away from Jocelyn Ortega, the woman he once trusted to care for his children. Her attorney says the 55-year-old suffers from severe psychosis and depression and heard voices telling her to kill the kids. But a video shown during the trial contradicts the defense claim, as Ortega is heard saying she never heard or saw Satan.
Do you remember at all talking to her about that you felt that you're being possessed by devil? The devil was taking control of your body?
No. Prosecutors claim Ortega acted out of anger against the Krims, particularly the children's mother, Marina Krim, for allegedly overworking her. Marina Krim was not in court today. The jurors are expected to begin deliberating tomorrow. In Lower Manhattan, Hazel Sanchez, CBS 2 News.
The trial stretched on for 2 full months under intense public and media scrutiny, as the entire city seemed to hold its breath, awaiting the moment the jury would deliver its final decision. After 2 days of tense deliberation, the verdict was announced. Jocelyn Ortega was found criminally responsible on 2 counts at the highest level of severity, and 2 additional counts related to causing the tragedy involving the young victims. On May 14, 2018, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The emotional toll the case took on the jurors was undeniable, as they had been forced to confront deeply distressing details throughout the course of the proceedings.
We were divided at the beginning, and we were divided until the moment we made the decision.
I think I can speak on behalf of everybody. I say we feel great in the decision that we rendered.
This was a very difficult decision for all of us. While the basic facts were very clear from the beginning, we also wanted to be sure that we were giving everybody a fair opportunity. It was not a decision we reached lightly or easily. There were some raised voices and a lot of tears. But I think we all feel good that we addressed all of the issues and fairly weighed everything that was presented to us.
After the verdict was announced, Kevin Krim shared an emotional post on Facebook in which he said he had tried to hug as many members of the jury as possible as a heartfelt thank you for what they had endured throughout the trial. He wrote that they had been forced to go through an extraordinarily harsh emotional experience, required to listen to and confront things no one would ever wish to witness. Kevin also acknowledged that the trial had been a painful and demanding journey for his family. But at the same time, it had deepened his connection to New York, the city that Lulu and Leo had loved so dearly, and that was bound to their happiest memories. When all legal proceedings finally came to an end, that moment also marked the point at which Jocelyn Ortega was forced to face the final sentence for what she had done, closing a chapter of profound sorrow that will never be forgotten.
Just a few words, Your Honor. This defendant murdered 2 innocent children. She did it intentionally. She did it with the full knowledge of the consequences of her actions. Now is the time for justice. Justice for Lulu, justice for Leo, justice for Marina, and Kevin, and Nessie, justice for the people of the state of New York, justice for all of the people who are part of the Crim's life, who love the Crim family and love their children. And it's time for justice. We meted out the horrific acts of violence that this defendant inflicted upon those children and upon the parents and the family. Nobody saw signs of a serious mental illness because there was no serious mental illness. That's what the jury found in rejecting her defense, and that's the way that she should be sentenced.
At the sentencing hearing, Kevin Crim stood up to speak, facing Jocelyn Ortega directly and expressing his absolute outrage as he described her as narcissistic, dangerous, and utterly devoid of responsibility for what she had done. Turning to the judge, Kevin spoke with all the urgency of a father who had lost the most precious things in his life. I believe you do not need this plea from a father, from Lulu and Leo's dad, after everything you have seen and heard. But I still have to say it. Please follow the law as you always do, and ensure that the defendant never has the opportunity to leave custody while she is alive. He added that the defendant did not understand the meaning of responsibility and showed no sign whatsoever of remorse.
And more importantly, it is right that she will go from being hated by the world to being forgotten by the world before she's even dead. While Lulu and Leo's siblings and legions of family and friends, even friends who never knew them, will never forget their inspiring legacies. In my best moments, I feel Lulu and Leo inspiring me and carrying me forward. In my most difficult moments, I try to ask myself what Lulu and Leo would choose to do. It's the best beacon of hope, the best guidance which of us could ever hope to have. Thank you.
The defense attorney urgently asked the judge to consider leniency, requesting that Jocelyn Ortega be held in a special protective unit with full access to mental health professionals and treating physicians, and told the court, I understand that my client took the lives of two incredibly precious children, but I beg you not to close off the remainder of her life without leaving any possibility of mercy. However, Judge Gregory Caso firmly rejected the request, calling Jocelyn's actions utterly evil, and at the same time praising the jury for soberly rejecting the defense's argument of diminished responsibility. The plan to end her own life on that day was intentional and clearly calculated, unmistakably so. He stated, adding, the only question that remains unanswered. Largely because the defendant claims she does not remember, is why she chose to take the lives of those children. After the trial, in an effort to prevent similar tragedies in the future, the Crim family publicly supported a new bill aimed at criminalizing the provision of false references and fraudulent credentials in job applications involving childcare. And in their statement, they emphasized, our family was deceived and betrayed by the defendant's own relatives, who have faced no accountability whatsoever for the tragedy that took our children from us, while affirming that every child deserves to be cared for by honest, trustworthy, and responsible individuals, and that no one has the right to lie when the safety of children is at stake. And as this story comes to a close, what remains is not only the pain of one family, but also a haunting reminder about trust, about the safety of children, and about the warning signs that are sometimes overlooked in everyday life. For me personally, this case shows that even in families that appear happy and carefully prepared, Tragedy can still strike if we underestimate mental pressure, honesty, and responsibility in childcare. No explanation can ever make up for the loss of Lulu and Leo, but I hope their story will make society more cautious, more aware, and more compassionate in how we protect the most vulnerable among us. Thank you for listening to today's story with me on this true crime documentary journey. If you have any thoughts or feelings, please leave a comment below as a way to honor the victims. Don't forget to share the video, tap like, and subscribe to the channel to continue accompanying me in the stories to come. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.